So here we are, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our daily meeting. Today is a special day because we speak about an interesting arguments. We will speak about real estate today, the art of what to do. And even today, we will have different guests, huge club today together, different guests. They will speak about real estate, about the market, about all the questions you will have about the real estate market. Please ask and stay with us. But before to go in our, we can say hello to our friend from Marbella, Spain. Before to start and go inside our daily meeting, let's roll with the music and with the show. Here we are. And so, just to start, let me introduce my partner, just to go inside the real estate market. André, welcome, like always.
Hi, Gianluca.
So today we will have a special guest, and we will speak about an important word.
Yeah, it's wonderful to have these. We've got a family office today and a notary as well, based from Cannes, and it'd be wonderful to have them on today and to just get some insight on the insides of property here on the French Riviera, and just really explore a little bit and get some questions from the viewers today on anything that they would like to know as we move through the next hour. So welcome everybody. Thanks,
yes.
Gianluca.
And just to start with our first guest and partner for today, let me introduce to you all the greetings from Portugal, from South Africa, from Spain, from Italy. All the world is with us today. So let me introduce to you our guest, Robert Anthony. Robert Anthony, and she is the family office guest for today. Robert, please introduce yourself and your word to our guest.
Hi to everybody. Hello, it's happy to be back again. Just to say, hope of all of you are being safe and keep well and keep healthy. And as we come out of this lockdown, keep your masks on so we can appreciate enjoying the Riviera. Now, I also want to say that we're not just dealing with the Riviera. France is the #1 secondary home tourist spot probably in the world. So we're dealing with the whole of France. And I run a multiple family office looking after high net worth people buying secondary homes and primary homes eventually in France. And we're happy to try and give you some feeling as to what's going on today with Ghislain, who I'm sure Gianluca will be happy to introduce.
Yes, for today, we will go inside our deal, our title, real estate, what to do. And to do this, we have the voice of French notaries. We have the voice of French notaries with us. And Robert, please, if you want to add something about next guest.
Yes, Gianluca is a very on-the-ball notary, Ghislain, and based in Cannes, which is a place of high net worth people. He very much is educative in the Chamber of Notaries, so represents many notaries and is speaking today on behalf of the notary profession. We know Ghislain for his knowledge and his know-how and his teaching, and felt that he would give us some insight as to what's really going on in the marketplace. We obviously, as a family office, see what's going on, but everybody out there is worried, and we want to reassure you that France is still your dream, and we want you to dream with us. So therefore, we want to explain why we are a nice place to be. And even if you're tied up in your gardens today in the countryside, whether you're in England, whether in Spain, whether in Portugal, that one day you can be alongside us and enjoying part of France. So let's tell you all about it.
Yeah, the voice of French notaries. Try to connect again, please.
Yeah, unfortunately, we have overload in the systems at the moment, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. So while we're waiting for Ghislain, André, maybe we can go on to the first question and start discussing it, and maybe Ghislain can join us when he gets a better signal.
I have the solution. I will call him by phone, and we have his photo ready, so we can speak all together without.
That would be great.
There we go.
Yeah, and but just to understand better, Robert, please could you introduce us a little bit the real estate market? How do you feel the market?
Well, this is a very interesting situation at the moment, where everybody really wants to know what is going on. And the interesting part of this is that one would have thought with the coronavirus that the market would stop dead, people would stop doing deals, prices would collapse. But I think we've got to put the things a little bit in context. You know, we've been going through a period of quiet times in the property market where quality product has been selling and less quality product has not. So a lot of the actual market has gone down probably 30% and has stabilized at less 30%. So what it basically means is with the coronavirus, either it continues to go down, which can happen on commercial property, but on residential property, quality property has basically maintained for the moment. Now, possibly it could go down 5% or 10%, but what we're seeing is quality picking. What is really critical and what is very important is to actually choose the property that you want to buy. So if you buy in a good location, what Ghislain will say when we finally manage him to get to connect is that most of his transactions...
I got it.
Yeah. Have you got him back on again? Is Ghislain with us?
Ghislain is with us. Ghislain, are you here?
Yes, I am with you with the sound. I'm sorry for the picture.
Okay.
But I perfectly hear you, and I also Robert.
Okay.
And I can confirm everything about the status of the market. My comprehension of the market is that we have not one market in France, but a lot of different markets. And the premium market is basically the market which will be the less likely to be impacted by the corona crisis. And to be honest, all major concerns are more for the first access market, because banks will not restrain the possibility to give access to borrowers who don't have a premium profile.
Yes.
But these borrowers are not concerned by the premium market, obviously.
Yes, I agree with it. I agree. And Ghislain, what I wanted to say on this is that the premium market has already discounted substantially. So the deals that are going through are already good deals in the first place. So they're not going to have a double discount. Would you agree with that?
Yes. Again, we are not on decisions that are based that are took in days or weeks. It's a long-term decision, the premium market. And when you are investing, and I shall not say investing when we are talking about leisure property, when you are planning to take all of your vacation in France, on the mountain, in Paris, or elsewhere in France, it's not a decision for 1 year or 2 years. Usually it's an investment based on a duration of 5, 6, and sometimes more than 10 years. So saying that a 5% decrease could have an impact on such a market, it's not reasonable.
Ghislain, I have a question from our friends here in French Riviera. We would like to know, how has the confinement affected the values of luxury properties?
Well, I think we've been saying this, Ghislain and myself. Yeah. We don't feel it has. What we feel is that, sure, there's a more difficulty to actually visit them, but I've actually recently seen a property sold in Courchevel during confinement. I've seen a property sold in Cannes during confinement. And I think Ghislain is continuing to do his acts. Now, maybe there's a slowdown in the marketplace, but we've actually seen an ironic increase. If we go into the Luberon, what's actually happened, a lot of British people and Parisians are now deciding that they want to buy country homes because they're now realizing that being centralized into apartments in Paris or in UK, in central London, they would, or major towns, that they can now go with their families to holiday properties. We don't know what's going to happen with aeroplanes, but if you can get into a car and you can drive to your property, we're actually seeing a very busy market in the Luberon, which is exactly the opposite of what everybody would anticipate. Would you agree with that, Ghislain?
Yes, thank you, Robert, and I totally agree. First thing, the sale that were already out, we closed this deal during the confinement. We had the possibility to act on the behalf of clients. All of the notaries in France have this possibility by using power of attorneys. And I'm glad also to tell to everyone that the office will also be able to be open to the public next week. So we could, of course, assist all of our clients in their conveyancing operation. And all feelings is that you're right, on the luxury market, people are willing to have more properties, and maybe the apartment, if they have a choice between an apartment and a property, they will prefer to purchase a property because you spoke about Paris, London, but not very far from Cannes, there is Monaco, and it's the same situation. People who were confined in Monaco who didn't have a leisure property, you know, in the
nearby,
maybe thinking about purchasing such a property in the future.
Yes, yeah. And I guess that comes to our question you were talking before about whether the price is going up or down. But what about the areas? Are there any particular areas where you've seen some sweet spots or safer to buy at the moment, or a better buy? Have you seen any specific area from the clients you've been dealing with?
Yeah, I will go a little bit into that. For example, yesterday I had clients speaking to me near the Swiss border, where property, depending where, could be slow. So they think it's now the time to get a deal. So if you go into back country, it's possible you can get discounts because people are frightened and there's less demand. But if you go into prime property on waterfronts, if you go into prime property, I'll give you an analogy of Cannes. And I think Ghislain then can expand on this. If you go into Cannes and you want to buy a property with a sea view, you'll probably find it's still quite hard to get it. The further you go away from the central banana of Cannes going towards Mandelieu, the more you'll have available. But the more you go to the Golden Triangle near the Festival and the Croisette, the harder it is. If you then go backwards into the Californie, where you are basically in apartment blocks, all of a sudden you'll find a large availability, but there was before the virus. So therefore, they're still not selling as before. So that doesn't mean they're not available. It just means you cherry pick. Would you agree, Ghislain?
Yes, I agree with that, because the current status of the market is that there is a high yield on very premium market. And you're right, Cannes, it's not Mandelieu, and I think the Cannes market will continue to be very attractive for people. And one thing very important on the luxury market is that the valuation depends on the people who are willing to purchase, but also on the will of people who are actually owning their properties. And usually these people do not need to sell. They want to sell at their price. And if they do not find someone who is agreeing to giving them the price for their properties, they will not sell the properties and wait for 1 year, 2 years. It's not a problem for them.
Yes, they're not in the street. Yes, agreed.
Common people who are willing to first sell their properties in order to buy a larger property. It's not the same market.
No, and also the banks are following. Ghislain and I do not have problems with banks. You read the papers and say there's a problem with the banks. During the coronavirus, we've basically refinanced and restructured 3 to 4 files or purchases with no problems with the banks, but you got to pick the right banks. So even getting the valuation. So the market is really there, but it's down like anything in life, being very careful what you buy and getting the right advice and the right support. And the notaries are in a very good position because there's a central database to actually know what's happening in transactions. Perhaps, Ghislain, you can explain this a little bit.
Okay. So in France, it's important to know that the data about the pricing of every property is public data. That means that everyone has the possibility and the right to know what is the price of this property or this apartment. It's public data, and any notary in France can assist you in giving you what is the current market status of the property you are willing to purchase. The other thing, because we are talking about bank financing operations, the other thing is that banks are usually using valuators, and today, due to the crisis, valuators are not in a comfortable position to do their job properly because they usually use past references. That means if you are located in an area where all of your neighbors have recently sold their properties for, let's say, 1 million or 2 million, there is a good chance that your property is valuated 1 or 2 million. And these valuators will not have sufficient references after the corona crisis to lower the valuation. So our opinion is that these valuators will continue to maintain the current and usual level of price, and the crisis will not have direct impact on the valuation of real estate, on premium luxury real estate. It's not the same issue for portfolio. And I think, Robert, you have a lot of clients who are willing to refinance or change their mortgages.
Yes. This is something very. This is something very important. In that, a lot of people over the years have used private banks for tax reasons and for investment reasons to purchase their properties with investments, collateralized and leveraged loans. Now, what's happened with coronavirus is created a fairly artificial marketplace. The artificial marketplace is such that the banks have seen the assets, the portfolios that are securitizing their loans diminish in value. When they see an asset diminishing in value, whether it's a corporate loan or a private loan, it basically creates what's called a margin call. A margin call is the bank saying, we want more collateral for our lending. This creates pressure on the investor as to what to do. So what we're actually seeing is a dichotomy of two problems. We're seeing the investor either saying, I haven't got the collateral and my bank is putting me under pressure, so I need to sell, or can I change institutions and can you help me? Now, we basically, as a firm, in 2007, as I said in our last program, told our clients when to convert on their investments. And even in this crisis, if I can say, most of our clients are only about 4.5% down to 5% on their total portfolios and not 30%, which is quite a considerable security. Yeah. So we have little to no margin calls. But unfortunately, other institutions haven't had our investment strategy. So what we're doing is we are at the moment, and we've actually done it together with notaries like Ghislain, restructured the clients to change their investment banks or their lending institutions so that they can keep their properties and not have to be forced sold. Because like anything, when you force sell something, the value goes down by supply and demand, not because the property is not worth its value, but simply because you have to sell it quickly, so people want a bargain. And so our job, together with Ghislain's job, is to try and stabilize our clients, to not create precipitative action and get rid of their properties for the wrong reasons. So the first thing we want to do is to do an audit on a client who's under pressure to see whether we can save their home from having to be sold. And the second thing, whether the valuations perhaps are too conservative by valuers panicking. I mean, Ghislain, have you seen any of this type of problems?
Not yet, because you give me the opportunity to explain to people what a French notary is doing with mortgaging. Our core job is to assist the clients when they are consenting mortgage on their properties in France. And sometimes, very usual in the French Riviera, you will have Monaco Bank, mainly, or Swiss Bank or Luxembourg Bank, who will have a mortgage on the properties in France, but their loans are still subject to Luxembourg, Monaco, or Swiss law. And in this particular situation, usually the notaries in France is able to provide legal advice about the contract. This is one of our jobs. But in such a situation, we cannot provide legal advice on the content of Monaco or Swiss or Luxembourg loans. That means that the client will need to have proper legal advice if he wants to have it with a lawyer or with his own family office. That's a very important thing to know.
Okay. But Ghislain, you have seen, because we've actually even done it together, us moving one bank to another in order to resolve this problem, because you've actually already experienced with us, haven't you?
Yes, of course. Notary is also capable to assist the client who wants to refinance his loan. He will have the possibility to set up sometimes we will need to set up sometimes a new mortgage, a new security on the property, but sometimes the notary will also have the possibility to use the previous mortgage in order to allow to make substantial economy on tax, on land registry tax.
Okay, yes. So what do you suggest? What do you suggest to a customer from Monaco that has a Monaco?
I think it's a common sense to say that if a client has a margin call, very important, he needs to find new money to add to the portfolio. Maybe he can think about seeing another bank and to have his loan refinanced.
Yes, which is what we've been doing, and where we have actually worked together, because Ghislain basically has put together with the new bank a way of not paying full notary fees and minimizing the costs, so it's not too hurtful to the client when he restructures. And we've already done 2 files like this during the coronavirus. And we're about with another client, we're doing a 3rd one where we've actually saved all 3, where all 3 have had margin calls, and all 3 have actually come out with liquidity, the exact opposite of the margin call, where they've actually come out with cash in their pocket, free, with no pressure at all. So I think this is very important, because you're only as good as how you structure, and there are a lot of people under serious pressure at the moment, not because of the values of the properties, but more because of the strategy and corporate governance and policies of the banks. Now, as Ghislain said, Ghislain is not there to be a finance broker or a lawyer who's advising on foreign legislation. And where in France, if you have a French mortgage, the banks have given 6 months holidays on capital repayments, here we're predominantly dealing with interest-only loans. And when we're dealing with interest-only loans, the clients are just paying back the interest. But if they basically are collateralizing their loans with assets, the problem is the value of those assets. And that's where the clients are really having problems today. Not everybody, thank God, but quite a few. And where we feel that this needs to be addressed, and we're happy to help people with those problems.
Yeah. So it's really about, you guys acting as intermediaries in the process, and combining yourself with Ghislain and the notary. You do that complete solution to resolve some of the challenges that people will have at the moment in going through these processes.
Yes, our job is to keep the cost to a minimum, and utilizing Ghislain's knowledge on banking and restructuring. There is legislation that allows him to stop having to pay double costs, but to minimize the restructuring costs. And then it's for us to source a bank subject to the profile of the client and the actual assets and liabilities and income of the client, and to try and find an equitable solution so they can sleep at night and their dream of the Riviera remains a dream. Because at the end of the day, everybody out here wants to enjoy life and not have stress.
Yes. I have a question for both of you, perhaps in your experience, you know better than us. What about the developers? Are they still active, or what's up?
Ghislain, do you want to start on that one?
Yes. On my side, we are not purely developers, but our feeling is that the 2 last months were frozen. And maybe we will have, after the confinement, let's say kind of spring, and all of the developers will have the possibility to have their properties visit again, and this will help the market to be renewed, because it is right to say that the new deals were frozen during this period, and it's very comprehensive. I can understand that. When you are confined in your apartment, you can have a dream, you can think about purchasing a property in the French Riviera or on the mountain, but you will not have the possibility easily to visit properties and to make a decision. And again, this is a long-term decision. It's not something that you will purchase this year and resell in 1 year or 2 years. Usually you will keep it 5 years, 10 years, maybe more.
Yes, let me interject into this one. When you go for planning permission, you basically have to have the services of the town, and then you have to have, after the services of the town, the planning permission, and then you have third-party objections. What's actually happened because of the confinement, that the services of the town are closed. So, and then the planning is closed, which is what Ghislain is saying. So therefore, if you're going to planning permission, there was a big argument because they said, oh, we'll wait, and when everything reopens in July, we'll get going again. And all the developers say, we go bankrupt if you do this. So what they did was they changed the law and said, we freeze the situation until the lockdown, which is normally the 11th of May, opens, and then we continue the clock where we left off. So if you've been going for 2 weeks with services and your planning permission, then you've got 2 weeks left, and then you've got 2 months, and then the planning starts unblocking. So that's from a planning point of view, and then you've got the 2 months third-party objections. From a constructural point of view, the government really wants building sites to operate. But then you've got to look on a regional basis of every single town and department as to what the law is. So, for example, if you go in certain parts of the Var, you can do works outside, but you can't do works inside. If you go into the Alpes-Maritimes, and we've been looking at this only as recently as today and yesterday, generally speaking, you can do works inside. So each town has its own legislation, depending, but the governments generally don't want to stop development and construction because it's too damaging. And but it does. But there has been, as Ghislain will confirm, the ability to delay completion on certain contracts. Maybe, Ghislain, you can talk a little bit about on the delay of completion.
Yes, one thing important is that the current legislation says that all of the administrative delays are frozen and they will restart again at the end of the month. So that means that if, unluckily for you, you have completed, let's say, preliminary contract before the confinement, normally, and it's a very common situation, you know that in France, the city has a priority right. Unfortunately, this priority right, the delay for the city to answer is usually 2 months. But the effect of a current route in France is to freeze this delay, and this delay we start again at the end of the month. So that means
let me just explain what you mean by a priority right for our listeners. A priority right means that when you buy a property, that the local town council has the right to buy it at the same price instead of you. So they have to write a letter to say it is not their intention to buy it. And then at that stage, you know you're free to buy it. Sorry, carry on. But I don't think everybody understood what a priority right was.
You understood perfectly this situation. So we are in the situation where even if people are willing to proceed, they are blocked by this situation. And luckily for us, some cities are answering to this right. They do not wait the 2 months delay. They are saying, even if their services are reduced due to the situation, they are answering to us and they say, okay, you can proceed. You do not need to wait the end of the 2 months. That's a good situation. But the other issue developed by Robert is also the issue for instructing building authorization. And on top of that, all of the things Robert told us, on top of that, you also have to think that all of the city council were renewed just before the confinement. And we had election for the cities in France at the middle of March. And unfortunately, there is a second ballot, and this second ballot was postponed after the confinement. That means that politically, for very important projects, current teams are not willing to proceed on this big project because they are thinking about who will be the next mayor, and maybe there will be a different development policy on this city.
Yes, let me give you an illustration on this. Imagine you are wanting to do an investment into photovoltaic, and a lot of the photovoltaic is going into the green belt. Now, the local towns want to convert the green belt into photovoltaic because it's green energy, and therefore it's positive. So there's a lot of positive thought towards green energy. You're a mayor who is existing, and as you're a mayor that's existing, your job is to say, can I convert my town in Toulouse, in wherever you are, in or Courchevel, maybe not because it's too expensive, into green energy. Now, what it basically means is it sometimes can take 1 to 2 years to get planning permission. With this coronavirus, everything is frozen because the mayor, even if he was at the end of the 18 months, will not make that decision because it's considered to be a political decision because he doesn't want to be seen to be biased. So it is, to a certain extent, has slowed down a lot of development, not simply from contractual points of view, but in terms of investment points of view from photovoltaic issues. So this is what Ghislain is basically trying to explain in terms, it's a political influence that could affect certain issues which we have to be careful on. Having said that, there are certain towns that have major approved structures already that are quite determined to finish them off and therefore are trying to make the environment user-friendly for the construction companies because otherwise they fall behind in their projects. But that is part of the problem as well.
Yes. Ghislain, we have a technical question for you, for a customer. Suppose that I am ready to buy today, and we have all the documentation is ready, is done, is perfect. In how many days? When could you give us the meeting, when the appointment to close the deal? When are you able?
So, first thing, if we suppose that all of the documentation are gathered and we do not have any issue for completing the deal, any notary can receive you from next week at the beginning, let's say on Monday. If the deed is set up, they have the possibility to receive you in their office next week. Okay. We are privileged physical meeting and to keep physical meeting only for completion, and we were strongly advised if we are talking about preliminary meeting or just legal advice meeting, we prefer to have phone calls, video conference, and to keep physical meeting in the office just for the signature. And it's important to know that in France, when we are talking about notarized deed, usually it's always easier to have the people in front of us instead of using power of attorneys or distance completion process.
So yes, let's Gianluca, let me just interject if I may. There's a
two-step process.
Yeah, there's 2 points.
Terminated. You have a deal. You have discussed the price. You agree with the property. We will first sign a preliminary contract.
Okay.
The purpose of this preliminary contract is just to seal all of the terms of a negotiation, to seal the price, to seal the property, and there is, after that, usually it's 2 months and a half after that, we will have a second step, very important as well, which is the definitive contract, the notarized deed.
Okay.
And it is only this definitive contract that will transfer the ownership.
Okay.
If I can interject on this question. There are 2 issues that I think are very important for everybody to understand, which not everybody does understand. Every buyer has the right to choose their notary. Now, a lot of people go to an estate agent or an intermediary, and they're told to use a notary, which is saying it's a government officer. The seller has the right to choose their notary. The buyer has the right to choose their notary. And the notaries share the fees between them, and it does not cost the buyer any more money. So it's very important in France to understand that every buyer has the right to have their own notary, which is not normally understood. Number 2, which is also very important, is that when a buyer is buying a property, you said that, Gianluca, all the papers are perfect. How do you know? Because the problem is that which is what we do regularly as a family office when we work with other notaries, we go through all the paperwork and actually see what the client thinks they're buying to make sure that when we come to the completion meeting,
you made a due diligence.
We make a due diligence because what happens is when you come to a completion meeting, let me give you a simple illustration. You buy a house in the country with the intention to build a swimming pool and a tennis court. And when you come to the notary to sign, he tells you, but you can't build a swimming pool and a tennis court there. It's not possible. You've got all the money from the bank. You're ready to sign the completion deed. So our job is to work with the notary it's not the notary's fault because the notary is just carrying out a notarial act. And at the completion meeting, he says, well, this is what you can and can't do. And the client said, but that's not what I was told. Yes. So our job is to work with the notary to make sure that the client understands what they're getting. And I'm sure Ghislain will explain to you that he's regularly been in a completion meeting where the client has a surprise and doesn't think he's buying what he thought he was buying. Is that true, Ghislain, or not?
Yeah. What is true is that I think you may have had clients who had a bad experience, but usually the kind of issue you are talking, it's our job with all of the parties involved to anticipate that. Our job as a notary. A notary, it's not a normal situation to explain to the client during the final meeting that finally this project will not be able to complete this project. So it's very important, especially if there is a family office, to have a communication with all of the parties involved with the client and to anticipate what is the client will. You are right, Robert. If the client doesn't tell me that he wants to buy a swimming pool, well, I will just inform him that the urban law, what is the current law for urban law application in France, but it's just general information. If I have the information that the client is willing to set up a swimming pool and that this operation is very important for him, well, we will anticipate his demand and make sure that when we sign the definitive contract, the client will have proper legal advice from the notary and from all the other actors, family officers, lawyers, if they are involved in this process. It's a teamwork. Every notary is accustomed to work as a team.
Yeah, sorry, Ghislain. And in your opinion, is there a common mistake in a daily negotiation or daily deal?
Well, you've got to.
I say there is no. When people are telling me, I will ask you a very annoying question. There is no annoying question. The only bad questions are the questions you don't tell.
Exactly.
It's very important when you have a project in France to tell everything to your notary, to tell everything to your lawyer if you want to set up special vehicle, and to tell everything to your family officer.
Okay.
Yeah, let me explain, Gianluca. When you're buying a property, you've got estate planning, which the notaries understand. You've got rights of passage, which the notaries understand. And you've got urbanism, which the notaries understand. But you've got foreign clients, and you've got an estate agent in the middle, and often the estate agent often appoints the notary. Now, if the notary doesn't understand because the client doesn't communicate some of these problems, or the estate agents, they find themselves in an embarrassing position because they were unaware there was a problem. So why Ghislain said it's a team effort is because we as an office are used to these type of problems, and therefore try to avoid them happening in the first place because we know what the problems are. So if I can give you an illustration, recently was a problem of cutting trees of the next door neighbor. Well, a notary is not into litigation on cutting trees. We had a problem of rights of passage where there was a passage going through. The notary will tell you there's a right of passage. But then if the actual buyer doesn't know there's that right of passage, and then in the completion meeting, he's told, you know, you've got this right of passage, and the notary understood it was understood, then it creates a problem which Ghislain is nothing to do with Ghislain, because the client was not understood the situation. Is that fair, Ghislain, or not?
Yes. It's important to know that every notary have an obligation to give you proper legal advice, but sometimes we are talking about there is a frontier between practical problems and legal problems. Legal problem is all issue, but sometimes the issue is not legal. The issue is practical, and when the issue is practical, we are not on the property. There is things that we cannot see just by seeing paper, just by seeing maps, just even with Google Maps. And sometimes other people are more qualified than us to give not legal advice, but practical advice about property.
Yeah, let me give you another. Yes, and let me give you another illustration. You're buying a property that is in a seismic zone. You're buying a property that is in a fire zone. You're borrowing money from a bank, and you have to have insurance. So the notary is not the person who's going out to get the insurance. And when he comes to respect the bank, what he has to see is there's an insurance policy. But if you don't deal with these problems in advance, you can have a problem that you can't insure the property. And then you've got a problem that the notary can't respect the bank because he doesn't have the insurance certificate. So this is another practical problem which we all have, and flooding as well. It's on a place where there's flooding or slipping down the land. So all these type of things are where a family office link in with the notary, and we do a team play to try and ensure that when we get to completion, and then you've got a last problem, is translation. If a notary basically did with a file themselves, they have to basically have a professional translator. When we as a family office are dealing with a file, and we're often forming a company, we're often signing for the client. So we don't need a translator. So it basically means they don't have the costs of a translator. So it actually economizes the client of a translation cost. So there's a lot of advantages of team play.
I think it's better to go through the deal, inside the deal. It's better to come to you before, to speak with the family office, build the business or all the documentation.
Structure, yes.
The deal, and after, at the end, when everything is ready with the family office must check all the documentation. If everything is okay. So it's better.
And it makes it much easier for Ghislain because it's not compromised, because these practical problems are dealt with before he gets over involved on a completion, because otherwise you sit there for hours trying to resolve the problems.
So Robert, in terms of Brexit, has that affected any ways that you have dealt with people now currently looking at buying property from the UK? Has that affected anything majorly affected that people should be wary of, or what's your thoughts on that?
My thoughts are there's British people wanting to take French nationality. There's British people wanting to buy more property. And if you actually look, it's not simply the south of France. It's all over the whole of France. So no, Brexit, I think, is a bit of a white lemon. It's a big problem for many people. But I don't think, anyway, Brexit hasn't happened yet. It hasn't taken effect. We're still running with today. And there's articles in the Figaro saying, should British people be allowed across the border? I don't want to go there.
Yes.
They're my country. I'm proud to be British, but not so proud of who's the government today.
Yeah, okay.
And I'm not a socialist, incidentally.
I have a question, Robert, for you and for Ghislain. First, for you. We said that before to buy is better come to you and study all the process and the documentation.
Sure. And the basic structure, yes.
Yes. So what makes you special for our customer? All our customer has understood that they need to come to you before to go to the notary. So why they might choose you?
Well, basically because we've been doing it over 30 years. So I think we've got a bit of experience in the matter. And we have many ultra high net worth clients who are fairly high profiled, where we do this quite regularly. So experience, know-how, knowledge. And anyway, as you know, anybody who looks at my internet site, my background and my team, we're made up of lawyers, accountants, and wealth advisors. I myself am a professor of international tax law, a wealth manager, and a chartered certified accountant. So I understand multi-jurisdictional systems. And we also have an international network of banks and lawyers in different countries. We're part of Geneva Group International, which I mentioned in the last program, which is in the top 2 multidisciplined firms in the world of independent advisors, of lawyers, accountants, and consultants. So we have the infrastructure, we have the professional indemnity insurance, we have the licenses to be able to do these things. And also we are members of the FNIM, which is one of the largest syndicates of property people in France, where we have colleagues which we can call upon for advice when we need it. So I think we can do that, yes.
And I can confirm all your competencies. Ghislain, what about you?
Yes, on what about us? Because as every of the notaries in France, please know that every notary is minimum 7 years of studies. So they have a very high skill in conveyancing, probate, and mortgaging. Of course, we are properly insured, like every professional. And one of our major, most important thing to know is that less than 0.1% of audits are challenged. So that means that when you are signing a notarized deed in France, when you purchase the property, you are 99.99% sure that your deed will not be challenged. And this very high level of security, I think it's the core value of a French notary.
Okay.
Yes, I think it's very important what Ghislain's saying here, because a notary has a responsibility on provenance of funds, on KYC today, where he respects international law on a buy or a sale. And also we're talking about buying, but we should also be talking about selling, because they also have to return funds to people selling properties and also dealing with the capital gains tax on the sale of properties. So we work very close together with notaries like Ghislain, working out the capital gains tax issues and ensuring if the people are outside of Europe, they have proper fiscal representation. So Ghislain and I have to make sure the people pay the right amount of tax. And I would say today, I'll be happy to share with viewers that we basically won a court case in December where our client was reimbursed 600,000 euros of a CSG RDS, because who lives in Britain, because we fought the government and said it was not due. And we've actually just received the reimbursement from the Inland Revenue, and we dealt with the legal lawyers doing it. So our client is very happy. And even to go that even further, when I rang the client to tell them the news, the client said, well, Robert, I just want to thank you one step further as an international taxman. You asked about Brexit. And I said, why? He said, because I had £3 million of capital gains tax. And thanks to your advice, I saved 2.4 million. So in actual fact, I saved the client £3 million of tax. That's enormous.
Wow. Yeah.
Now this is what it basically means. Yeah. So well, it's not congratulations, it's my work. So, and we don't do it for free, I hasten to add. But on the other hand, if people have sold their properties and they've paid CSG RDS and they're in the European community, forgetting the US, which is a special new law, our job is to try and reclaim it and actually get it back and get them their money back, but it has to be under 2 years. So my job with notaries is to help them where the client may have to pay this on completion to get their money back. We work with Parisian lawyers on this because we work as a team, and it's not the first time, but we're there to try and create case law where we believe in what we're doing. If we don't believe in what we're doing, we'll say, I'm sorry, like a good doctor, we can't help you. But if we can, we want to do it. And Ghislain is on the cutting edge as well, where he cares about these things for his clients. And Ghislain, have you got any comments on that?
No, I just wanted to add, on top of our job, one thing very important, I will not discuss about tax issue where we are not directly concerned, but you are right. If the client has the possibility to make an official reclaim, France is governed by the rule of law, so the client has the possibility to do that. But one other thing very important for foreign people is to know that every notary has a very important duty for all of the monies that are located on all escrow accounts. That means that when you are sending money to a notary and when you are receiving the sales price from another notary, you are sure that your money will be handled with correct rules and that your prices will be represented. It's a security point, very important. It's basic knowledge for all of the French people. They are knowing all systems, but for foreign people, a common question is, am I sure to have my money back when I sell my property? The answer obviously is yes.
Okay.
Yes, they're protected. Yeah.
We have a question. We have a question from Jon.
In this challenging moment, the best time to approach new digital tools and online platforms and to involve concepts as virtual real estate agent and advisor, online selling process, Matterport. So I guess he's talking about the utilization of digital and online and how that involves the process, but it's a bit different for you.
There's nothing that's really changed, you know.
Yeah.
Digitalization is one source of sourcing a property as another. So because you're digitalizing doesn't mean that you have to decide whether you want to see the property or whether you're buying it virtually. But at the end of the day, to register a property, you need a notary, you need a Ghislain in this world. So effectively, the fact that you're digitalizing the asset or trying to sell it by web or whatever doesn't mean at the end of the day the property doesn't exist. And in addition, you need to have it in a legal form, which also leads me to another point, that if you're going to rent the property, you have to have the correct legal form. So, and a lot of people write the wrong legal form. They don't prepare accounts because they don't understand they needed to do it. So it's very important to have the right legal form and the right advice so that people don't end up not dealing with what they should be dealing with. And I think Ghislain would agree with me on this point.
Sorry, I didn't hear you. The connection failed.
Okay, I think you would agree the correct legal form is important, Ghislain, when you're buying, because if you're renting it, you need to still have the correct legal form.
Yeah.
Of course, one, it is important for clients to anticipate and to be very explicit with their project, with all of the parties involved, salary officers, lawyer, and notaries. You need to explain what is your project. If your notaries or your family officer doesn't know that you are intending to rent the property, and especially furnished property, it could be an issue. On the other hand, if you anticipated that, if you open the discussion, all of these people will allow you to set up a good special vehicle and to be properly assisted in order to set up commercial companies and rent furnished or not. Because
yes, and this is so important. Yeah.
So I think in summary, yeah. So in summary, online tools are great for the seller and these digital tools, but implementation,
you have the practical
side. Experts.
Yeah, online tools are already in existence. There's many online tools for rentals. You've got Airbnb, works like a dream when in a normal environment. That's for rentals. And in sales, you've got people doing sales. There's new sales systems. I would ask to raise venture capital for a new sales system in towns. Depends on the value of the property. But are you going to buy an online ultra high net worth luxury property? I think you'd want to have a little bit more due diligence than buying an online ultra high net worth property, no?
Agree.
So, dear gentlemen, the show is at the end. I would like to thank you for, I really appreciate your time and your wonderful presence with us today. I would like to say thank you to our voice of French notaries, Hermet Ghislain. Thanks for coming.
You're welcome.
And Gianluca, if I could just say a last word. We have us on the digitalization. We have the net. And a lot of people do a lot of research on the net. And one of the titles of today is What to Do. It is very dangerous to try and do cheap solutions on the net because you don't have all the knowledge. And Ghislain, as a notary, and myself as a family office, are there to complement the things that are not on the net. So please, people need to understand digitalization has its limitations. And it's very important to be with real people with the real advice.
Yeah, agree.
You're perfectly right. You have an interaction when you are speaking to real persons, even on the phone or via emails. You have an interaction which is very important. And we spoke about the issue that can be encountered when you purchase a property. These issues are miscommunication. If you do not talk about your project, you will not put your lawyers, your notaries, and your family officers on a good position to assist you. And that's the key point. Communicate and explain what is your project. That's I think, the final recommendation to all of our clients.
And I would give you another point. I had a conversation in Oman today with a client where they want to buy something for the mother. I regularly have men coming into my office saying, I want to do this and I want to do that. And I say, have you talked to your wife? The wife may not have the same point of view as the husband. So it's very important. It's very important, this interaction, to basically deal with human beings and not just machines.
Right.
Agree.
No, right. So very good. Thank you.
Final word.
Thank you, everybody. I really appreciate your time and your presence with us. Thanks, Ghislain, Robert.
My pleasure.
Thank you. It was a
and
pleasure.
Keep safe, everybody. Keep safe.
Yeah, keep safe and stay tuned. Tomorrow we will be together again with the sport legend. So here we go with our final music, and we see you together tomorrow. Thank you, and
thank you.
Good night.
Okay.